Alright, we're coming up. Sure. Okay.
À, 2:17 rồi. Ok. Bây giờ mình không đọc nữa không?
Khỏi đi hả?
Tùy đó.
Thôi đi, còn ai muốn đi mình đi ngoài, chờ đợi tụi nó có 40 phút thôi nè. Đó, tôi với ông ở ngoài cũng được, chụp hình đó.
Alright guys, well the part of the cave that we are seeing on this cave tour today was discovered back in 1960 by a man named Peter Preble. He was a cave explorer looking around some of the passages above us with a few friends when he and his friends came across a crack in the floor. Now this crack is about 5 feet long, but only 14 inches wide at the top. And when they shined their light down this hole, they realized two things. One, it dropped straight down beneath them 35 feet in the ground, or about 3.5 stories. And also, at the narrowest point, that 14-inch gap had narrowed down to 5.5 inches wide. Now, obviously, no one can fit through a crack that small, so like any good caver back in the 60s, they pulled out a few sticks of dynamite, put it in the middle of the hole down there, and they blasted it to 8.5 inches wide, which is now about this big. Now, this man, Peter, was a very, very confident caver, so when he saw the 8.5-inch wide crack, he went, yeah, sure I can fit through there. And he then tied a rope to his ankles, gave the other end to his friends, and he dove down this hole head first. But when he got to the 8.5-inch point, there were a few things he had to do to fit through. First, his nose stuck out too far, so he turned his head to one side to keep it in line with his shoulders, and his ears began to brush the walls on the way down. Next, his shoulders were too wide, so he put one arm down and one arm up to rotate his shoulder blades a little bit, and he is now stuck upside down in the hole kind of like this. And finally, his chest was too big to fit this passageway as well, so he began to do something that cavers call compression breathing. And this method, you exhale all of the air from your lungs, allowing your rib cage to collapse to its smallest point. That is the only time that you can move, because the very second you breathe in again, your chest will expand and you get stuck in the hole. So it might look a little something like this. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Well, it took this man Peter about half an hour of doing compression breathing to get on that 35-foot drop on the ground, at which point they named it Jam Crack because, well, Peter jammed his way through a crack. They then entered a section of passageway I can tell you from my own personal experience I found more difficult than Jam Crack, and it's known as Purgatory. Purgatory is a 150-foot long tunnel that begins about 4 feet tall and narrows down to 9 inches tall for the last 50 feet of the squeeze. But what makes Purgatory so difficult to make your way through is the entire length of Purgatory is lined with a very, very sharp rock that makes it feel like you're crawling through a giant cheese grater. Not very fun to crawl through at all, and took me about an hour to get through there. So in the last hour and a half, they've gone about 185 feet. Not very fast or very far at all, but when they came up on the other side of Jam Crack and Purgatory, they realized they were in the second largest cave room in Colorado, which is right behind the door in front of us over here. So, as we enter this massive room here, we thankfully are not going through Jam Crack and Purgatory today, and then we get to walk into our cave instead. So, you're welcome. Let's head on to these doors right over here. Alright guys, come on into the cave here. Please go to the right half of the platform out there. As we enter the room here, please go to the right half of the platform out there. Now, as we came in this room here, we also might have noticed a few changes to the atmosphere. See, I noticed it got a bit cooler down here, and there's also a lot of water on the floor as well. And that's because every single day of the year inside the cave, no matter what the weather's like back outside, it will always be 52 degrees Fahrenheit and 98% humidity down here. So, nice and cool in the summer, and then it'll feel nice and warm by comparison in the winter, and then very wet and sticky all year round. Now, since we are in a room called the barn, we should have some farm animals down here, right? Well, if we take a look right over here, we can see our giant cave pig Wilbur. His eye is right over there with that white rock and a brown pupil. His snout comes around to the left over here, and his big floppy ears hanging down right there, giving us that giant cave pig. Now, we can't leave our pig alone because he might get lonely, right? Well, to keep him company, we have this cave rooster right over there as well. Our cave rooster's head is up on top right up there, front of the body into the feet at the bottom there, and then his tail feathers stick back up that way, giving us our little cave rooster as well. Now, the cave that we are standing in today began forming about 2 million years ago as water began seeping through cracks in the limestone. This water picked up carbon dioxide from things like decaying plants and animals, and that turned the water into something called carbonic acid. Now today, we can find that very same carbonic acid in our soda, and that's what makes it bubbly and fizzy. But this mild acid is able to dissolve the soft limestone rock over time, and those small cracks in the mountain begin to expand, and given enough time, we end up with a full-size cave passageway that we can walk through like we have today. But we are not going to get a room this big off of that carbonic acid alone, because if you think about it, just dropping a rock in your soda tonight at dinner will take a very long time for that rock to disappear. And that's where the presence of the hot springs come into play. At one point in time, the very same hot springs that are currently below us in Glenwood Springs entirely filled the cave here with water. Now, these hot springs waters have sulfur in them, and as that sulfur water from below is mixed with carbonic acid from above, we end up getting sulfuric acid. Now, as you might know, sulfuric acid is very, very acidic, so it can dissolve the limestone rocks a lot faster, and therefore leaves behind a bigger, cooler, and overall more impressive cave like we have here today. Now, I want you guys to look at the brown rocks we can see on the opposite wall right over here. And this brown flaky rock is something known as limonite, which is made of 98% iron oxide, which is basically just rust. But this limonite rock is actually pretty cool to see here because it tells me the hot springs once filled this room. See, when that hot springs water was filling the room here, there was a bacteria living in that water. That bacteria there ate away the iron in the mountain and used it as a food source. Now, what goes in must come back out again, so as its waste, it left behind the iron oxide here. And so when you think about it, this limonite rock is basically just a bunch of ancient calcified bacteria poop. Pretty cool stuff, right? Well, like I said, it tells me the hot spring once filled the cave here, so pretty cool to see that stuff down here as well. Now, we are in a cave called the Fairy Cave. This is one big cave inside the mountain that has 2 different cave tours in it. The historic Fairy Cave tour is above us by about 30 or 40 feet up there. And that's the top level of our cave system. And we are currently in the basically the middle section of our cave in that Kings Row cave tour. So yes, there is a lower section beneath our feet as well. But since we are inside a cave called the Fairy Cave, let's take a look at our little cave fairy who's hiding in these rocks right over here. Get to a spot where you can see the purple laser pointer on the wall right there because I'm circling the cave fairy now. Her head is up on top right there. Arms are crossed in front with wings out to the side. Triangular dress is here, and a leg goes down beneath her like a little ballerina fairy. Again, her head is up on top right there. Arms are crossed in front with wings out to the side. Triangular dress here, and a leg goes down beneath her, giving us a little cave fairy there. Now, we have named that cave fairy there Callie because she is stuck in a rock called calcite, but we also have the legend of our fairy cave down here as well. And that means that if we get dripped down by some water from the ceiling, that's called a cave kiss or a fairy kiss, and it will bring us some good luck. So, you'll definitely want to get some of those today. And you'll also know when you get dripped on because they can be very cold, very wet, and very, very surprising. Has anybody been kissed by our cave yet on the cave tour? Few of us. Well, hopefully we can all get some lucky cave kisses by the time we end our cave tour today. Now, do you guys like bacon? Bacon's pretty good, right? Well, let's go take a look at my personal favorite cave formation, which is actually called Cave Bacon. We have some great stuff right over here that we can go take a look at. Over here, which I think looks pretty fantastic. Cave bacon. We got some great cave bacon right over there. But from this area here, we can also see a few other cave formations as well. What I think look a little bit like icicles up here, but are still all solid rock, are what are called stalactites. And on the ground coming up from below, we have what's called a stalagmite. Now, the best way that I can remember those two is that stalactite has a C in the name, C for ceiling, and they hang on tight to the ceiling, where stalagmite has a G in the name, G for ground, and you might trip over them when you're walking around. But all these cave formations back here are actually formed in a very, very similar way. See, that very same carbonic acid making your cave bigger is also taking a mineral called calcite from the limestone. It brings the calcite into a room like we have here, at which point the carbonic acid returns back to water and drips away, becoming a cave kiss. But when that happens, the small particle of that calcite mineral is left behind on the surface of the cave, and over the course of many thousands of years, those microscopic particles add up and harden together, and eventually give us the wonderful cave formations that we can see on our cave tours today. Now, at this point in time, we are about to begin our descent down, and in total, we are going down about 120 stairs, and yes, unfortunately, we do have to come back up the same 120 stairs. If you're not wanting to make the journey with me, you're welcome to hang out in this part of the cave here, and we even have a very cool formation called a bench right over there for you guys. Now, if you are coming down with me, I ask you to please watch your step and use the handrails, because our stairs can get a bit slippery down here, especially when we get to the wooden stairs about halfway down. Well, like we saw at the top of the stairs, the formations hanging off the ceiling here are what are called stalactites. But there are a few different types down here. See, if you look in the back corner over here, we can see a few that are all long and skinny, and pretty much the same thickness. Those back there are what are known as soda straws, because they not only look a bit like straws there, but they are in fact hollow. So, if you did break one off, you could actually drink through it like a straw. But what happens when a soda straw gets plugged or gets a hole in the side? We eventually end up with a cave formation called a cave carrot. And we can see a great example of a cave carrot right up over here. At this point, I think it looks a bit like a stalactite on a string, but that is the awesome cave carrot that we can see there today. Now, as you guys have probably noticed, we do love our cave food down here. We've already seen some pretty great cave bacon, some soda straws, and now some cave carrots. We're going to stick with the hungry caver food theme, and next to me in the corner right over here, we have named this stalagmite the glowing Cheeto, because we think it looks a bit like a glowing Cheeto there, right? Now, down below us ways, there is a larger stalagmite down here, and we have named this one Oscar because we think it looks a bit like the Oscar Award. Now, if you look carefully at our Oscar there, you might notice a very small drop of water lands on his head every couple of seconds. And that little drip is making Oscar the fastest growing formation in our entire cave. See, on average in the cave here, 1 cubic inch of formation growth, or about half the size of your thumb, will take about 1,000 years to form down here. However, Oscar is growing that same cubic inch every 125 years. So, given enough time, Oscar might become the largest formation in the cave, although as we'll be seeing in a few minutes, he still has a very long way to go. Oh yes, so we have the cave and our cave kilometers and also what are called we don't have glasses. And then some of our cave tools so we'll see a few of those if you look very carefully at the cave.
Man, these glasses are so dangerous. Imagine if they turned off the light.
With you.
On my hand, I'm just pushing it.
at the beginning of our cave tour today, we talked about how Peter and his friends had to go through Jam Crack and Purgatory to find this massive room down here, but we have not seen where they came in from yet, because that connection from Purgatory into the barn here actually comes into the floor in this part of our cave system. And we're going to see the opening into Purgatory on the other side of the railing from the next platform we're about to get to ahead of us. So, when we get down to this next platform, look over this railing right over there, and you'll see a very deep pit with a red light in the bottom. That red light is located in the Purgatory passageway where they would have crawled out of the floor 60 years ago and found the barn here. Now on the very same day they discovered and named a room called King's Row, which is what you guys really came down here to see in this cave tour. So I'll have you guys follow me down the rest of these stairs and we'll go check out Purgatory and King's Row. You guys can come on down now.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And welcome to King's Row, everybody. You guys can go ahead and take out your phones and cameras again to grab some photos as we spend a few minutes down here. King's Row actually has the most formations of any single known room in Colorado, with about 4,000 cave formations in this room. Now there are even two types of formations that we have not seen in our cave tour yet. If we look at the wall directly to our left over here, we can see a rock that I think looks like it's melting. That is a cave formation known as Flowstone, but if you look at the middle of the Flowstone right there, we can see the Pillsbury Doughboy step in the rocks there as well. Now looking back towards the middle of the room again, we can see what happens when a stalactite and stalagmite get so big they meet together in the middle and make one big cave formation from floor to ceiling. That is now called a column, and that column that's about 5.5 feet tall is over 500,000 years old as well. Now a bit farther back in the room we can see a collection of stalagmites here that I think looks like a sandcastle. But what Peter saw when he first came in this room was the back row of a chess set, or the King's Row, giving us our room name, King's Row. And finally, off to the far right side of the room over here, we have a massive stalagmite that we have named the Wedding Cake. And the reason for that is the back side of the stalagmite there looks a lot like a tiered wedding cake, but it drops down 10 feet beyond what we can see back there, making that formation about 15 to 17 feet tall total. One of the biggest, if not the single biggest in our cave system here, and over 750,000 years old. Now let's change the lights in the room a little bit here. Let's get the middle lights off and turn on these ones instead. We have some pretty awesome purple black lights down here, but wait a second, if our laser is a black light and turns our formations green, should these black lights here turn them all green? I think we should find out, right? Let's go ahead and get the rest of our room lights off here, and if you do want to grab a quick photo of just purple, you are welcome to do so now. I would recommend taking that picture with no flash because you'll get a better photograph overall. And then once you do have that picture, I ask you to please shut off all phone screens and camera lights again so we can get the true effect of our black lights back here.
Where's the place that he did this jam and stuff?
So remember where that red light was down over there? So they came down through Jam Crack, across through Purgatory, and then up into the room out of the floor where the red light was. So,
How long did that take?
To get from the original entrance to this room here would have taken those explorers about 3 hours to get down here, because they would have to go through basically the entire length of the walking tour right up above us, but crawling through small holes the entire time. So it would have taken them at least an hour, hour and a half to get through there, and then an hour and a half to get down through Jam Crack and Purgatory into here. There is one more thing I do want to show you guys from this platform here, and it's something we guides have named the heart of the cave, and it's in this hole above my head here. So what we're going to do is I will shine my flashlight into the hole and have you guys file past me to check it out. Then, once you've seen it, please make your way to the very top of the barn up here, where we'll regroup as a big tour before we get ready to exit the cave today. I will ask that we stay as quiet as possible and also out of the way of this other tour so we don't interrupt them too much, but come on and check out the heart of the cave here.
Go on.
So take a look up here and check it out on your way by.
Oh wow. Đây là cái trái tim của cái núi. Nhìn giống trái tim không? Đúng không?
Super cool, right? I do want to thank you guys all again for joining me on this cave tour today. It was great to have you guys all along. I hope you guys had a little fun as well. But let's get back to the daylight here.
Con.